everyone, Colin Canet here for Woodwork Web. Today we're going to be looking at Dovetail jigs, and this is a commercial jig, and we're going to be showing you the different components of it, what it looks like, how it works, and how to set it up. We've had a few requests from people over the last few months who have jigs similar to this, and they've had some trouble making dovetails with them. So today we're going to go over some of the characteristics, and all of these jigs work similarly, although there may be some jigs that have some specific ways that they need to be set up or work. So you'll need to read your instructions, if the instructions are there and if they're good, in order to set these up. Now, before we get started, when I bought this jig a few years ago, I asked the salesperson at the store if this did thru dovetails, and he said yes, it did. And so they had the dovetail jig on sale, and so I purchased it, and not so long after, the salesman was gone and the company actually went out of business, and guess what? I discovered that the jig does do thru dovetails, but that the extra components to do that aren't included in it. So it does something called Half Blind Dovetails. And I'm going to show you the difference between thru dovetails and Half Blind Dovetails, because all of these jigs, when you buy them, almost every one of them only comes with components to do what's called Half Blind Dovetails. So here we are back at the trusty whiteboard, and this is called a Half Blind Dovetail. This is called a thru dovetail. Now, the reason that this is called half blind is because from this side, this wood, you cannot actually see the dovetail. And typically, if this was a drawer you were making, this would be the front of the drawer. And there may be a face plate on top of this, or this might actually be the front of the drawer. So for making drawers, this is quite acceptable to do. This is called a thru dovetail, and when we talk about dovetails, in almost all cases we think of a thru dovetail. Very often these are hand cut, and they're also used for drawers. In this case, there would be a drawer front go on top of this, a plate go on top of this, because you wouldn't want this through to be showing through. So that's the difference between a half blind and a thru dovetail, and today we're going to be using a jig that makes half blind dovetails, but you can get a template extra, an option to make thru dovetails. Now, before we get started actually cutting some dovetails, it's important to go through the anatomy of this jig. And today I'm using a CMT jig, and this is a steel jig. It's very, very well made. Now, the jig on top, the wood will be held down with this clamp on top, and it's on springs, and you need to clamp it down with the twist knobs. There's also the same clamping device on the front, and we'll put some wood on in a minute so you can see that. But what I wanted to show you is that on each side of this jig there are pins, alignment pins, and this jig has a left and right hand side, and that's because you can make left and right hand cuts. So obviously this is the left hand side of the jig, and what sits up on here, the wood that sits up on here, is basically what will become say the front of a drawer. The side of a drawer is what goes in here, and we'll put some wood in a second. So there's this alignment pin here and this one, and you'll notice that they're a little bit offset, and that's because the dovetail pins and tails are a little bit offset. But when you're ready to cut the other side of the drawer, so this cuts the left side, this of course would cut the right side. So when you were cutting the drawer top, if I had a piece of wood here, here's some scrap from some former cut. So the wood typically goes in here. This is the drawer front, and it aligns like this. Then when you go to cut the right hand side. Now I should show you that the pins actually go in here like this, so you see how they butt up against that one, and the pins actually fit in front. This wood here fits in front of the back wood, and they need to line up perfectly along the top here, nice and tight, and then clamped. And that's the kind of cut that you will make with your router when you do that. But when you cut the other side, you just simply take this wood and rotate it like that. Now you notice there's some cuts already made, but this is just a test piece. So it would go like this, and a new piece of wood would go in here, and that's where you would make the right hand cut on the top, or sorry, the right hand cut on the front of your drawer, and this piece here would become the right hand side of your drawer. Now let's put the template, we'll put some blank wood in here, because we're going to be cutting some wood anyway. So let's do that, and we'll just snug this up a little bit here, and same on here. Now what's missing on this, of course, is the template, and this is the template. This is a steel template, and it sits down on top like that, and it has the fingers, and basically when you route, you will be routing in and out of these pins in here. So when you're ready to start routing, you need to make sure that this wood is firm up here and it's snug down here. This template needs to be, you need to make sure that these templates are nicely snug down and that this wood is firmly attached, and then you're ready to route. Now your router, let's take a very quick look at the router, and this one already has the dovetail put in it, but this has a 5/8 collar, and this jig cuts 1/2 inch dovetails. So in here, the way it is set up is it uses a 5/8 collar, and these actually, the holes in these templates are 5/8 of an inch. Now not all dovetail jigs are going to be like that, but this one has that feature. Now there's one last thing that I want to show you before we go on to start doing some cutting, and that is, and this is an important part, if you look carefully, you'll notice there's an S here, and I don't know what the S stands for, but you'll also notice that it aligns with the top of this wood. And the position of this template is very important to how the wood, how the pins and tails come together. And this wood here, the way you adjust this back and forth is simply on the ends of the template. You can see that there's a bolt running through here, and there's actually a nut that does the adjusting, and there's one of these on each side, and as you move that nut back and forth, it allows for a little bit of movement back and forth of this template. And it's critical that this template is set to the right angle, and it needs to line up exactly with this wood on top here. So you need to put this wood in first, this one down, and then the template needs to line up, and it needs to line up on both sides. And once you've done all of that, then of course the entire jig needs to be fastened down firmly to your bench, and make sure all your joints or all your wood is firmly attached in there, and you're ready to do your first cut. And that's precisely what we're going to do right now, is start cutting. So what you're looking at here is just some scrap that I used when I first set this jig up. And what I wanted to show you, if I go right on the end here, if you look at that, you'll see that this back wood is deeper, or see how there's a space in there? This area here in the back, that's what they look like when they're cut. They're rounded like that. They're too deep, And the net result is that that fits in. Now there's also a bit of a faux pas here. I don't know what happened there exactly, but you can actually see how that is too deep. And that's what the template on top, that's why it has to be aligned. If it's too far back or too far forward on the jig, that's what'll happen. That's the troubleshooting area for this jig, is this area in here. Now, just to show you how a properly aligned one looks, there's the drawer back, or sorry, the drawer side. This typically would be this would be the side here. This would be the front of the drawer. But what I want to show you is how nice and tight those fit. Now the nice thing with these kinds of jigs is because this is cut with a router, and see how this is round in here, and if you look at these pins, look at how round, see how they're rounded? When they go in there, they actually fit really snug, and when you put some glue on there, boy, it's a real tight, a real nice tight hard joint in there. So it's actually a pretty good system. Okay, and back to our jig. Now what I've done off camera, I've tightened this top, so it's got the top part nicely snugged in here. I used the tightening bolts on each side, or tightening nuts on each side, and I also tightened the front part of this, and I made sure that these woods met very tightly at the top. It's very important that those meet tightly at the top, because that's going to make the difference between a good joint and a bad joint. Now the next thing, again off camera, so that you can actually see this, I'm actually going to be tilting this up like this, because otherwise when we put the router on here, you can't actually see what's going on. So I'm actually going to tilt this up just like this, so that you can actually see what happens underneath. So I'm just going to set that up off camera, and we'll be ready to start cutting some dovetails. Now the one thing that I haven't shown you yet is this is the router, and it's unplugged, it's upside down, and I just wanted to show you, this is the dovetail that came with the jig, and because this jig makes something called a half blind, or sorry, a half-inch half blind, it wants to be basically half an inch, and I just wanted to show you that I use these measuring bars for quick calibration, and this is a half-inch little bar, and the very tip of that router bit, that dovetail router bit, is exactly a half-inch above the plate of the router. So that's, and there's the router. And now we're going to be turning this upside down, or right side up rather, and running that through the dovetail jig. So let's get started and actually cut some dovetails. Okay, here we are looking underneath. There's the router bit right there, the dovetail bit, and there's the front part of the wood here. The top part of the wood you can't actually see, and those are the fingers for the template up there, just so you get your bearings here. And in a second I'm going to put my eye protection and ear protection on, and we'll actually start cutting these. Okay, let's see how we did. Okay, so there's our test cut, And you can see that that's done a very nice job. Now what you probably can't see is these are just, this side here is just a little bit proud, and I do that because when I sand this, I want this to be a little bit higher here so that it'll sand down with the side. So let's have a look at the mechanics of this for just a second now. So what we just completed doing was the left hand side of the drawer, and if I pull this apart, so this part here is the drawer front, and it's sitting here like this. Now to do the other part of the door front, or drawer front, you just simply need to turn the wood around just like that, and now you put it in the right hand side, and then you'll have a separate piece of wood that will now come up on this side and do the same thing on this side, so that you'll cut then the right hand side of the drawer, the right hand side of the drawer front, and the right hand side of the drawer, and that will give you a complete drawer front and two sides. Now typically we don't do dovetailing in the back of a drawer. You can, there's nothing that says you can't, but typically there's either a rabbet that's put in the back of the drawer, or even sometimes it's just a board that's nailed across the back then, and then of course there's the drawer bottom that needs to have a dado put in there to slide the drawer in. So that's what this CMT and pretty much all of these little dovetail jigs, this is how they work, and that's the simple explanation of using these little dovetail jigs. So for those of you who have asked us how to use, to do a short demo on how to use these commercial dovetail jigs, hopefully this will give you enough information that you can go back now to your dovetail jigs and figure out how they work. And if you happen to have a CMT with the not very good instructions that they come with, I must say I'm pretty disappointed with the instructions. The instructions they came with were not very good. I went to the internet and downloaded even more, and between the two of them you can kind of get through it, but they really need to get a better set of instructions for this particular jig. Hopefully your jig has much better instructions. So hopefully that gives you some ideas on how you make your jig work for you. If you like what we're doing, we ask you to subscribe to this channel. We also ask you to subscribe to Woodwork Web, and there's always an associated article on Woodwork Web that goes along with our videos, and sometimes there's links to other areas. In this particular one, we'll probably have some links to some of the dovetail jig sites so that you can check some of those things out. So, I'm Colin Cadet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.